And we are live. How's everyone doing today? So this is our let's say fourth live stream now, and this we got a couple different things planned tonight. Obviously, this is Michael's first stream on the channel, so we're gonna let him formally introduce himself and sort of tell his story of growing up as a Star Wars fan, and then we'll get into the latest episode of the Bad Batch. And then from there, we'll sort of wrap up what we've been discussing as far as all of the Disney Star Wars movies. And then from there, we'll just see what happens. So, Michael, the floor is yours. So, yeah, through your life growing up as a Star Wars fan.
So I guess you can say it's always been a little bit part of my life where I can remember watching the not the sequels, but the prequels was back in the day, in episode 1. I even remember playing the N64 games that were like Battle of Naboo and the pod racing game. I believe that PJ over here also had that as well.
Yes.
And so, I'm not really sure what to say other than that. I guess you can say it's just been part of who I am. And I guess I didn't really appreciate it until probably about high school because, like I said, I just kind of took it for granted because it was always there. I didn't really see it as that special, you can say.
Okay. And I know you and I, growing up, I was like you said, you didn't get into it really until you were high school. I was probably the bigger Star Wars fan growing up. Oh, and also,
all right,
thank you,
Epic John. Hi,
that's
the
Jonathan.
sequel.
That's Jonathan, by the way.
Yeah, hi. The sequel trilogy is kind of so for me, but I still like it. Honestly, relatable, but
Yeah,
beggars can't be choosers at this point.
We'll get into all of that much later. Sorry about that, Michael.
It's fine.
Yeah. So, at what point, what would you say, like, the one Star Wars moment was for you where you thought to yourself, okay, I officially love this?
Well, I want to say it wasn't like one moment, but I would say it's several. Where, for me, it kind of started off when we were at Disney and we had like those plastic customizable lightsabers. It was pretty much just a flashlight with an extendable blade to it.
The one that you got in the gift shop of Star Tours?
Yes, that one.
Okay, yeah, I remember.
And so I thought it was the coolest thing just because it was mine, it was my own, I made it, I was pretty proud of it. And
I
then
was halfway expecting you to say my precious there.
Yeah, I know. And then for the second moment, I would say was actually, I want to say it was either in 8th grade or my freshman year of high school, where PJ was actually in the Navy at the time. And so for Christmas, he had bought some Ultra Sabers. Gross. But sabers at the time. And I thought they were the coolest thing. Obviously looking back, they're not totally great, but I thought it was super cool because this was pretty much the closest thing that we had to an actual prop that we could get. Now, like I said.
And we had quite a lot of fun beating the crap out of each other with those.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we even took them to Florida one time. It was totally worth it.
We might do it again this time. We'll see.
And then, let's see. And then I want to say the third thing, this probably isn't any particular order now that I think about it. It was actually when PJ also gave me his entire collection of the Clone Wars that was released back in the day. So this was like a couple years ago. Didn't even think Season 7 was going to happen.
Didn't I give you that as a Christmas present?
Maybe. I don't know. I just had it in my possession at the time. And I started watching it, and I started rewatching the old Clone Wars movie. And I remember watching some tidbits of it back in, like, I don't know, elementary school, where I see the big reveal in Season 4, Darth Maul's still alive. But kind of watching it all for the first time and actually being invested into the show made me think, yeah, I really do enjoy this. This is something that I'll probably be part of for a while.
Okay. And then, obviously, you and I both, mostly me, but through, we admittedly drove our parents crazy with how much we loved Star Wars. So, what was
Yeah,
it
pretty
like?
much.
What was it like, from that end, especially once I left and joined the Navy? You know,
Mm.
how did basically what did mom and dad think of us, of you being as big of a Star Wars fan as you were?
Um, I can honestly say I'm not entirely sure. They can tell that I liked it, but they didn't really have a problem with it at that time.
Right.
Yeah, I can only
As long as it wasn't obsessive like we have done in the past.
yeah, which we obviously got into a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was a very good story, Michael. Very similar to mine, of course, since we grew up together.
Hmm.
And so with that, let's switch gears and talk about the latest episode of The Bad Batch. So first off, just general first impressions, Michael. What'd you think of it?
So I want to say that it was definitely one of the more darker moments of Star Wars, especially when we are revolving around towards how the Kaminoans' relationship with the Empire is, and really how this
Yeah.
transition of power is handling. But in regards to the actual team, Hunter, Omega, Wrecker, Tech, and Echo, they're all just kind of doing their own thing,
Yeah.
and you enjoy their time. But like once you see Crosshair, you just like, whoa, what's gonna happen now?
Yeah, this definitely was an episode not so much centered on the remaining members of the Bad Batch, but it was more centered on Crosshair and what he's doing now that now that Order 66 is working in his head, how he's serving the Emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's cool that even this soon in the game, we're starting to see the Empire want to move away from clones to actual enlisted soldiers, and we see the first batch of those. But of
Mm-hmm.
course, something goes wrong, and the Emperor's like, okay, it's expensive, but clearly we've got to keep clones for now until we can perfect our enlisted personnel.
Yeah.
And I noticed something else too. Do you remember that? Do you remember the scene where Crosshair and the new recruits are in that shuttle about to land on Onderon, and I guess the lead recruit, you might say, said, you know, why are you in charge? You're a thing of the past and we're the future. And that kind of reminded me of a very similar scene in the Bad Batch arc of season 7 where where Crosshair said, I think to Rex, why are you in charge when we're better than you? So I thought it was kind of cool to see that whole thing come full circle. You get what you deserve. You get what you give, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. And I don't know, I maybe he like one of the few people who kind of noticed this about the new recruits, but it does seem like that they have a lot of similarities to Inferno Squadron. For some of you who have not played the campaign for Battlefront 2, Inferno Squadron, and it's basically the Imperial Special Forces led by Iden Versio. And
Yeah.
I'm thinking that it's possible, but obviously anybody can wear a black like a stormtrooper armor. In which case, we're going to call it stormtroopers because that's what they are now in the Empire.
Right.
But I
And
couldn't help but look at the similarities between the two. Is what I'm trying to say.
yeah, for sure. And real quick, some comments that have popped in. Rhiannon, our youngest brother's boyfriend, or girlfriend rather,
Skeet,
apologize.
Deedles, I
I am
am
here.
here.
So thank you for tuning in, Rhiannon. Hope you enjoy the show. And
Godzilla
then
had a stroke trying to read that.
I apologize if I butcher your name, but Albergine Machine says, "Who's excited for Fallen Order 2?" I am. I
Yeah,
loved the first Fallen Order.
yeah, I'm obviously ready for it. I'm honestly just ready to see what happens in the future.
Yeah. Now, the biggest thing that I want to talk about with this newest episode of Bad Batch is a little bit early in the show. The Bad Batch and Omega have to crash land on this moon, and Wrecker hits his head against his restraint on the same side as what the inhibitor chips are, and later after that, he's complaining of a headache. So could that possibly be the inhibitor chips starting to activate Order 66 in Wrecker's head?
So I actually did not notice this detail until watching another YouTube channel, Star Wars Theory, about this, and he basically said the same thing. Wrecker hits his head, complains about a headache, and then he says, yeah, the place where he hits his head, which I'm guessing is on this side of your head, hit it.
The right side.
And so, well, basically, that could possibly lead to Wrecker or doing Order 66, which in my opinion would actually be very, very emotional, just because in this previous episode we see him basically create a room for Omega, and for him to pretty much turn a complete 180 would just be earth-shattering.
And he even gave Omega his little plushie, Lula.
Yeah. Like,
go ahead.
Like, if I had to describe Wrecker, he's that one person in the group who's just hashtag relatable every time, even though he's not the smartest, if we're being honest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Although I don't think it's going to get to the point where he goes full-blown evil. I think over time it'll get there, and he'll start doing things that are outside of his character. But I think that little gadget that Tech was working on in the very beginning of the episode, that he says will basically track their inhibitor chips and see what's going on with that, that's going to come into play perhaps even as soon as the next episode, where where they find out that, hey, his chip's starting to activate, and then from there they figure out a way to remove it.
Yeah.
And I think if they do that, that's even further evidence that they're going to go for a redemption story arc with Crosshair. Add on to the fact that if you remember at the very, very end of the episode, when Crosshair and the new recruits return back, which, by the way, they're now using the Bad Batch's old quarters repurposed, Crosshair has a little bit of a regretful look in his eye, where obviously he's being controlled by the chip, but he's like, I really miss my friends. Should I really be doing this?
Yeah, and it's really just because his mutation and it is kicking in, which whatever his mutation may be, which we would consider being a sniper in layman's terms, it's kind of like overriding the inhibitor chip, just because if we remember back in season 6, the inhibitor chip is actually something that is foreign, but was placed into clones in their early stages of development. So it's almost like it's nature versus... It's like the nature of Crosshair, a cloned soldier, versus like what everyone is expecting him to do.
Right. And also, real quick, Jonathan, thank you for inviting our 60th sub. We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else is there to mention about this newest episode? So what do you think the superior clone, as they called it, what do you think that's going to look like that the Kaminoans want to work on to maintain their relationship with the Empire, having just, had their contract broken with the Republic.
I'm
also,
not sure. Yo says Jay Devers, what it do?
Hey, Devers. This is one of our coworkers, folks.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're just talking about the newest episode, The Bad Batch, right now, bud. So yeah, back to the question, Michael. Who do you think they're gonna clone to make their current batch of clones obsolete? Because as they said, the DNA sample that they have is fading, so they need something else.
Yeah, I honestly have no idea. Like, I've heard some rumors swirling over the internet where they could potentially introduce the idea of cloned Force sensitives, which I'm not entirely sure, just because, as we know it, the Jedi are pretty much just dead.
Yeah, that's not cloning. Force sensitivity is not possible. You can't.
Yeah.
You can clone someone that looks like a Jedi, but you can't replicate their M count.
Yeah. Or at least it's very, very close to impossible, because in Legends they've actually tried doing this, and it usually, if they were to have a high M counts, the subjects would be pretty much insane, and just go crazy.
Which is what happened with the Starkiller clone in Force Unleashed 2.
Yeah, or at least the multiple clones that he had,
Yeah.
just because the protagonist in Force Unleashed 2 is that's pretty much a 1 in a million chance where you got it perfectly right.
But even then, he still had some insanity issues.
Yeah. So I'm not really sure. I think that as for now, we need to kind of think about who is the perfect candidate that we know of in Star Wars, just because
the only other person that I can think of is Palpatine. And this is where we do kind of start a little bit to shift into talking about the sequel trilogy, because it is confirmed in the Rise of Skywalker novelization that the body that Palpatine's spirit was using in that story was a clone. And of course, Palpatine maintained his force sensitive powers in that clone body.
Yeah.
But I think Palpatine is the exception, is because they didn't give that clone body any sort of autonomy and make a completely separate person out of it, like what they did with the Jango Fett clones. It was basically just an empty shell that they made, that Palpatine at the last possible minute expelled his spirit from the body that was about to die on the Death Star and sent it to Exegol to inhabit that new body. So I think that's one way to work around it, but at the same time, who aside from Palpatine is crazy enough to do that?
Personally, I only think that they made him a clone body just because they didn't want to explain who Palpatine's wife was.
True.
When the Emperor is sus.
Yes, very much so. So that's all I can think about to talk about for the Bad Batch. So let's get into now talking about all the Disney Star Wars movies, of course, starting with The Force Awakens. Now, you were not part of the channel yet, Michael, when I reviewed Force Awakens, Rogue One, and Last Jedi. So I want to get your thoughts on those movies. So just give like a brief, I guess, 5-minute review on each of those movies, starting with The Force Awakens, and we'll talk about it from there.
All right, so by order of when it was made, starting with Force Awakens, I would say Force Awakens is definitely the strongest of the sequel trilogy, no doubt about it, just because that's the one that started it. But I do feel like that a lot of the hype around it was definitely ruined by Last Jedi, just because I hear a lot of people over the internet saying, hey, there's actually a lot of buildup of Finn and becoming a Jedi in this. And as soon as we saw the movie, we're like, okay, he's just a regular guy. And then we see Rey, he pick up the saber, and we think, okay, this is cool. This is cool. And so it definitely played a bit safe, as you can say, just because it had a lot of parallels to A New Hope, where a planet-killing weapon was made. He had a Vader figure was present. Pretty much somebody who was considered a nobody from a desert planet.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't. But it didn't just stop there. It did have some of its own unique elements, such as the stormtrooper deserter. We had never seen that before. And then
that was one of the coolest things I thought about the whole movie. But like I said in my original review, personally for me, I would have liked to have seen them take their time a little bit more with that turncoat stormtrooper story. I think it happened just a little bit too soon for me.
Yeah. Or for me, it just kind of feel like it felt rushed, if you say. It was like he got out, he saved the girl, he got the saber, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Nothing much else to it. Okay. And then for Rogue One, so hot take, I would say that this is probably the most diverse Star Wars movie that actually gets it right.
What do you mean by diverse? By diversity of casting?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me explain. So obviously, the protagonist, Jyn Erso, is played by a white woman. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm going to use some terms that I don't particularly like, so bear with us, of course.
Say what you need to.
And then, her support was Cassian. I believe that he is of Spanish descent or Hispanic descent. Yeah. You can clearly see it through his accent. And then Bodhi, the pilot, being a Southern Asian, right around where India is, I would say. I could be wrong.
I think he's of Arabic descent.
Arabic. Okay. Well, either of those two, honestly, just because I do have some trouble distinguishing the two of them. And then, of course, there's L3, the most savage droid in the galaxy, where
L3, just talks... L3 was in Solo.
Well, L3, you know what I mean.
K2SO.
K2SO, the most savage droid in history. Who can speak, that is.
Yes.
Literally the best line in the movie. Where he says something like, "I'm going with you because Cassian told me to."
Yes.
That
was a great line.
He's just so blunt, and it's so hilarious.
Yeah.
And so, basically, you kind of get what I'm saying. They have a diverse set of casting, which is what a lot of people want nowadays. But unlike what most movies do, this actually gets it right, where they don't focus on the fact that, oh, she is a white woman. Oh, he is Hispanic. Oh, he is Arabic. They focus on who their characters are, where we first focus on Bodhi, who is a pilot that was working for Galen Erso, and sent over a hologram saying the Death Star can be destroyed. And then we have Cassian, who's pretty much just kind of the leader of the group, if you will, but also kind of has his own little orders to follow according to the rebellion. And then Jyn Erso, our main protagonist, is kind of the person who's on the run, a criminal, just having a hard time trusting people. So rather than exploring their identities on what they look like, they're exploring their identities on who they are as a character.
Right. And I absolutely love that about this movie. I also liked how they added a twist on this for all intents and purposes pretty straightforward story of good versus evil, with the rebellion versus the empire, showing that the rebellion, even though they are not the empire, they're still willing to do some somewhat dishonest things to win. Like, for example, that scene right in the very beginning where Cassian shoots his informant, because if he didn't, they would have both gotten caught.
Yeah.
Or again with the scene where Jyn thinks they're going to go rescue their father from the Empire, but secretly Cassian's order is to kill him, because the rebellion leaders don't fully trust him, given the fact that even though, yes, he is leaking them information, he did build the Death Star.
Yeah.
Or at least helped with it.
Yeah. They basically have the mentality of you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, basically.
Exactly.
And then on to the main events. Return of the man himself. So, with Vader returning, there was actually a lot of speculation around this movie whether or not Vader would return. And then we got that small tidbit of a teaser or when one of the first trailers came out where he's looking at a screen which looked like the laser cannon status of the Death Star.
Yeah.
And then when the final trailer came, we saw like a full sequence of him just walking through Mustafar or igniting his lightsaber. To which this actually didn't make the final cut, of course. It was just there to say, yes, Vader's going to be in this movie.
Yeah, that was something that I had forgotten about this movie, that a large portion of that movie had gotten reshot to make it more lighthearted. That even though it was still very much especially in the last half, a good boots on the ground war movie, it was going to be that even more so in the original version before all those reshoots and rewrites happened.
Yeah.
And I would have liked to have seen what that had looked like.
Yeah. Me too, honestly. Like I was telling PJ this, but it was just my opinion, but it seems like Rogue One on the Battle of Scarif was meant to represent the Battle of Normandy, otherwise known as the D-Day invasion, when all the Allied forces are invading France. And one of the most notable things about it is that the fact that they were pulling up on the beachfront and driving away the German armies.
Exactly. Like getting back on topic though with the movie, so many scenes that they showed in the trailer just were not there. Like for example, Jyn Erso with her gun in one hand and the plans in another, marching right toward a TIE fighter that's pointing its guns at her, as well as the shot of Jyn, Cassian, and that whole gang storming the beaches along with the rebels instead of doing what they did and getting into disguise and sneaking in.
Yeah.
So it makes me wonder how the battle would have turned out if that was what they did instead of sneaking in to get the plans.
Yeah. Well, I'm not entirely sure, just because obviously we'll never know because it never made the final cut, but it was definitely interesting to see. And then, so back to Vader, his actual appearance in the movie. So I want to say that this was definitely one of those moments where director Krennic just felt screwed over to where he thought he deserved a job promotion because he performed well. As both of us have had jobs, we can obviously relate to this. Like we think, oh, we do so well in our jobs, therefore we should get a promotion. But somebody takes our credit for them. But then Vader just pretty much says, you know what? You're not going to get this no matter what you say. And then there's almost like a Schwarzenegger free moments where he does crack a joke saying, be careful not to choke on your aspirations or something like that, where it did kind of remind me of like Batman and starring George Clooney, where it was very jokey, but it was okay just because it was something that was executed well.
It's almost like the scene in Empire Strikes Back where that one officer is falling to the ground dead after just being force choked, and Vader's like, "Apology accepted, Captain Nita."
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what it reminded me of.
Yeah. And then, of course, we get the famous hallway scene where it pretty much started the whole trend of hallway scenes.
Yeah, it did. Because we've had 3 of those now. We had that one, which was the first, and then we had the one with Maul in season 7 of the Clone Wars, which I still have not seen all the way through, and then we had the one with Luke in the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, which was every bit the equal to the one with Vader.
Yeah.
In fact, I like how those 2 scenes mirrored each other, where you had Vader by himself taking down an entire hallway full of rebels, and then on the flip side of that, you have Luke taking on an entire hallway full of dark troopers.
Yeah. All right. So Bombad Bounty says, "Hey guys, hey, welcome to the channel." And then the machine says, so could be wrong, but wasn't there concept art of Vader leading an assault on the beach of Scarif? I guess they decided against it in favor of the fear-inducing hallway scene.
And I
This
think that
is
and I think that's one thing that they did make a change for the better for, because yeah, seeing Darth Vader in combat at all was going to be cool, but I think just the dark atmosphere with the power out of that hallway scene just added to the whole scene. Basically, the hallway was only lit by Vader's saber and a couple dim red lights, and it just made Vader even scarier. Not to
yeah,
mention, not to mention the music of that scene helped with it too.
which is something that we've wanted to see more of. We wanted to see more of this powerful Vader, not a Vader that's kind of aged a little bit or is
Yeah,
trying to just toy with his son a bit.
yeah.
It's
Like
and
that is one thing though, and I get it that this was completely out of their control because A New Hope came out years before Rogue One did.
yeah,
But
obviously.
going back, but in retrospective, hey Sam, by the way,
Yeah.
in retrospective, the fact that Vader was able to absolutely slaughter those rebels just makes the Obi-Wan versus Vader fight from a purely visual and an action standpoint seem even sillier by comparison.
Yeah.
But then again, though, I remember reading somewhere, one reason why that fight looked the way it did is because George Lucas originally did not intend for the lightsaber to be this graceful weapon that the Jedi, flip around and use. It was originally supposed to be much heavier, which is why they just kind of poked and prodded at each other.
Yeah.
Add on to the fact that, of course, old Obi-Wan by this point is an old man.
Mm,
So yeah, again, not in their control, but it does raise the question of how's Vader in the timeline going from doing this in the hallway scene to having to fighting kind of reservedly in A New Hope.
yeah. All
I think
right.
I think I read somewhere that Vader, even though we really don't see it in the movie, Vader actually sustained something of an injury in that hallway scene. So that's at least part of the explanation of why Vader was not fighting in his top form, because he was fighting injured.
Yeah. All
And then
right.
Bombad Bounty says, "What do you guys think of CGI Tarkin? I thought it was mind-blowing at the time, but after seeing other people do a better job with deep fakes on YouTube, it's kind of dated by now." So I'll let you go first on
Um,
this one, Mike.
so the CGI Tarkin. So I was kind of in your shoes as well, where I thought it was amazing. I still think it's great just because of how lifelike it looks. Now, so far as it being dated and the deepfakes on YouTube that people have done, I really can't give a comment on just because I haven't seen them, which is honestly okay. I'm willing to admit that. But I still think that the CGI Tarkin was a good move by Disney and by
Yeah,
Lucasfilm, just because at this time, obviously, Tarkin was still alive, and it's something that we didn't expect either.
yeah. Like, clearly they wanted to use Tarkin in this story, but they couldn't use Peter Cushing himself because by this point he had long since passed away. So for me, when I first saw it, I also thought it was really cool, but I could also tell right off the bat that it was CGI. But I will at least give them credit that it's good CGI. I have seen way, way, way worse CGI out of things like the original live action Scooby Doo movie, the one that has, I think, Freddie Prinze Jr. in it,
The
and
Mummy Returns when The
the
Rock
Mummy.
is the Scorpion.
Oh, that is absolutely atrocious. And Spy Kids 3D, that CGI has not held up that well. Shark Boy and Lava Girl, that one's even worse. So yeah, compared to those, CGI Tarkin is
Yeah,
nothing. And And since we're on the topic of CGI characters, what, Michael, did you think of CGI Leia?
I want to say I had similar thoughts on it so far as like it being CGI. I thought it was really good. I want to also say it was pretty easy for them to do just because literally Leia just had one line and that was hope, and that's it. So it's not like they had to do a whole lot of work with it. And if I remember correctly, I want to say the actress who actually he played her maybe it was like Carrie Fisher's daughter or something.
It could have been.
I'm not entirely sure. That's something that I'm gonna have to refer back to my sources to, just to be sure. So, some of you in the comments, just don't come at me or anything. I admit I need to do more research.
And then the Bombad Bounty asks again, with that said, what is your opinion on Luke from Mando Season 2? I think it needed more work, but it still didn't take me away from the glorious introduction.
Luge.
We are not spelling police.
I know.
We're from the country. Grammar is an option where we live.
Yeah.
But I think that for sure it could have used a little bit more work, but at the same time, it was definitely an improvement over what they did with Tarkin and Leia. Not that what they did, at least to me, was bad, but I think what they did with Luke was just that much better, especially with how they, especially with how
Luke.
not only they made Luke look, but made it look sound. And then Aubergine Machine says, the Leia and Luke training duel scene looks funny because if you look closely, the helmets are all shaky. I didn't notice that. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I'm gonna have to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
And also hail to Dwight Paladin Graham. We just got off the Jedi Masters Zoom call with Echo Base, and he was there. So thank you for coming and joining us, Dwight.
All right, so back on the subject of Luke CGI, you were saying it was better than Rogue One. Not that Rogue One was bad, but it was just better.
Yeah, it was a clear improvement over what was there for me.
Yeah. For me, it really didn't matter the fact that it was CGI. Like, I knew it was going to be CGI most likely. Yeah. Just because there were some talks where Sebastian Stan could have been the new Luke Skywalker. I would have been cool with that too.
Still are.
Yeah, I think there still are too. And honestly, I would have been totally cool with it. But I want to say it was just because it fit in context with the story. Like, we had a feeling that Luke was going to show up sometime during the Mandalorian universe, we're going to say, just because obviously there have been some ideas of how the Rangers of the New Republic show may cross over, the Book of Boba Fett may cross over. So this whole Mandalorian universe, we all thought, okay, Luke's got to show up somewhere.
Yeah.
And the fact that they pulled it off so soon, when we already had so many connections to the Star Wars lore, like the appearance of Ahsoka, the appearance of Bo-Katan, trying to get the Darksaber, more Darksaber fights.
Real quick, Michael, I got to interrupt you, but I just got a notification on my YouTube app on my phone that just shows that James Cocker just subscribed to our channel. So, James, if you are watching this, thank you for subscribing.
Yes.
And if anyone's
senor.
If anyone's watching this that hasn't subscribed yet, please do. We would greatly appreciate that.
Or the FBI is going to show up in 0.1 seconds. We will make it happen.
All right. So, getting back on topic though with the sequel trilogy, let's talk about the big one. Let's talk about The Last Jedi.
All right. So the myth,
again, Michael, your quick review on that.
The legend. So without a doubt, this is the most divisive movie out of Lucasfilm, or any work for that matter, just because if I had to say a lot of good about it, I would say that, for one thing, it does pick up pretty much where the last movie left off. The Rebels... I'm going to need to see some ID first, John. I'm going to need some ID first.
Yeah, for those that just tuned in, this guy right here, this is our youngest brother.
Okay, so, anyways, picks up where we left off. Rebels or Resistance, whatever they are, have to evacuate, and First Order pretty much catches up to them because they blew up their big gun. So, I want to say that's like one of the good points of the movie, just because it's pretty much picking up where we left off. Because obviously, Force Awakens left with the cliffhanger of Rey, meeting up with Luke, and then offering his or her lightsaber at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. The machine says the last betrayal. Honestly, relatable.
Yeah.
Though I can honestly say I can enjoy the movie sometimes, but more to that later. So, other good things about the movie.
Real quick, Michael, you keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay, so other good things about the movie. So, I want to say that they brought up this idea of balance. And for me, balance has been a little bit of a part of my life. Like, I just love this idea of balance. And the fact that they brought this up in The Last Jedi is something that I thought was very nice, just because we've all been talking about the light versus the dark, good versus evil, black versus white, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, they're thinking more so of a yin yang situation where there's a balance between the two, where neither or one is conflicting with each other, but if there's balance, they complete each other, you can say. Kind of like how Mace Windu, who, even though he was a light user, he did have dark side. He had abilities in his lightsaber combats, thus granting him the purple lightsaber. All right, that scene where Luke teaches Rey about the Force was beautiful. Are you talking about the one where she basically gets smacked by Luke with the fern? Yeah, that's pretty relatable. But in all seriousness, I agree. Like, you can clearly see how powerful Rey is, which, even though that some may be divisive on how powerful she should be, you can see that Rey was truly meant to be some form of force wheeler, whether it be a Jedi or a Sith, with that one scene.
Yes. Now, real quick, since I had to step away, what was it that you were talking about?
So, if you remember in The Last Jedi, they actually brought up this idea of balance in the Force.
Yes.
So rather than two sides being conflicting, they brought up like a yin and yang dynamic where bring the two together in balance, they complete each other.
Right. But if I remember correctly, that wasn't George Lucas's original idea of balance in the Force. I think if I remember correctly, Lucas's original idea was that basically to bring balance to the Force, there was no dark side.
Yeah.
Which kind of seems counterintuitive, because then it's only the light side, but somehow George Lucas implies through the prequels that the Chosen One will destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force.
Yeah. Which, honestly, to play devil's advocate a little bit, I want to say that this wasn't really the first time that they touched on this. Because if you remember to the Clone Wars Mortis arc, where we see the ones, the Father talks about how a little too much light or a little too much dark is destructive to the universe.
Yes, you're right. You're right.
And the machine says, Ma Bendu. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's also, it's just because he's the one in the middle, as he claims, the Bendu.
Exactly. Which I haven't seen that part of Rebels. I lost interest and stopped watching it about midway through season 2, so I'll need to go back and catch up on that. I got a lot of stuff I got to catch up on.
Yeah. All right, and so let's see what else is good about Last Jedi before we move on to the critiques.
I can certainly say that from a movie making perspective, the movie both looks and sounds good.
Yes. Yeah, it obviously does. And so, with that being said, I will admit that. All right, so Dwight says May the force be with you. This is the way. In a few weeks, I'll make new content. Honestly, that's great news. We'll be sure to check it out.
Can't wait to see it, man.
Yeah, and thank you, by the way. This truly is the way.
By the way, Dwight, I think you'll think this is cool. I know on your channel you're real big about grilling things. Michael, when he was back at his college, was
Oh,
he
yeah.
worked in food service. So he's a good grill master with burgers.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So, just get off topic. I actually did work in food service a little bit, and then I received on-the-job training to handle industrial grade grilling, where really I just flipped burgers and then occasionally put bacon on the grill. But it was a skill that I developed. So if you want to, so who knows, maybe we can hit each other up. So Brandon Deeks, Shane Paul. Rebels is a good show. Star Wars, you need to finish it. It's not Resistance.
Yeah,
What
I'm
show? What's Resistance? Is that a show? Is that a show?
But yes, I will finish Rebels. I mean, I have Disney Plus, so there's no excuse not to. And
Yeah.
then the Bombad Bounty says Kylo was great. Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kylo is easily my favorite character out of that whole trilogy. So, but even still, even though he's my favorite, he's like the most contradictory character in this whole series, because he starts out in The Force Awakens where he wants to be the next Vader, and Snoke clearly wants him to be the next Vader. But then we get to The Last Jedi, and both of them seemingly abandon that idea, and Kylo Ren destroys his mask. And then in Rise of Skywalker, he does want to be the next Vader, and he rebuilds his mask.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And then Epic John says it's a crappy Disney Channel show.
What is? What is a crappy Disney Channel show?
John, I think you don't get the sarcasm we're using. Just kidding, man. We love you.
Yeah. And so, let's see, what else? Good moments, and this will probably be it, and then we can move on to the fun part. So
Yes.
the last good part I want to say was that one scene with Carrie Fisher or Leia when she was let's see. She was pretty much Mary Poppins for like a couple of seconds where the ship blows
Yes.
up. I love the
Yes.
visual, and I love that we still get a confirmation that Leia pretty much is force sensitive and had like some training.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really don't know much else other than that. So now on to the fun parts, the negatives.
Real quick, before you move on to that, Michael, I want to give my thoughts on that scene.
Okay.
I know I'm in the minority of this, but I actually don't mind that scene. I think it was cool, like Michael said, to see that Leia has had at least a basic level of training, and she was able, and logically, if a force sensitive person is pulled out into space, they're gonna use the force to pull themselves back to the ship. My only problem with that scene is it feels like it takes too long. That by the time Leia actually does pull herself back onto the ship, she should have suffocated due to the vacuum of space.
And also, she could have froze to death because the vacuum
Exactly.
is space.
Unless she was enveloping herself in some sort of protective cloak in the Force, which again, we don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, now for the
with
fun
this stuff,
part.
I pretty much just take it at face value.
Yeah. All right, now for the fun part, the bad.
Yes.
So,
and I'd like to go first with this one.
Go for it.
So, starting at the very beginning of the movie, and basically, one of the biggest problems that I have with this movie is the entire plot involving the Resistance running away from the First Order is absolutely stupid. Because again, you have the two ships, or the ships that can only follow each other at the same speed. The First Order can't speed up and overtake them and get within range of destroying them. They can only keep pounding them with their lasers at a distance. And yet somehow when the rebel ships run out of fuel, they stop they stop going forward as if physics doesn't exist in space, and the First Order is able to pick them off from there. That would
Yeah.
never happen. Like, the force of the propulsion, even after it cut off, would have still kept them moving forward at the same speed, because there's no force working on them in the opposite direction to slow them down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Yeah, for me, the plot was like one of the weakest parts of this movie, where basically, on one half, we have the Resistance trying to get away, and they figure out, oh, hyperspace tracking, the First Order has this. And while it's something that could have been done correctly, this isn't something that we got. It was just, for me, I don't know really how to put this. It was just sort of slow, if you will. It was pretty much very monotone. It was like, okay, they're trying to get away from the First Order. So what?
And real quick, the Bombad Bounty says, why did the Resistance call themselves the Resistance? Why not just be called the New Republic Forces or just the New Republic?
That's
That is a good point. That is a good
what
point.
that my
Because,
head hurt. My head hurts now. My head hurts.
yeah, because remember, the New Republic didn't get destroyed until halfway through The Force Awakens, and yet somehow the Resistance was already a thing. So are these two different entities,
Hmm.
or is that just what the New Republic happens to call their military, the
Yeah,
Resistance?
and also the Bombad Bounty says hyperspace tracking was mentioned in Rogue One. That is true. I was
Yes.
thinking of that. That is
And
true.
again, I have no problem with the idea of hyperspace tracking being there, because logically technology is going to progress as time goes on, and being able to track someone through hyperspace does seem like something that would be useful to the Empire / First Order.
Yeah,
But yet in Rise of Skywalker, they seem to take it just a little bit too far with that whole light speed skipping thing, where the Millennium Falcon flashes away, and immediately the first order, it's almost like they're teleporting from one place to another, and the First Order's right on their tail. Where
yeah,
in Last Jedi, it still took the First Order some time to get there after the Resistance came out of hyperspace.
yeah,
Not to mention, I liked the idea of basically Snoke's Star Destroyer needing to be the one that allows tracking for the whole fleet, instead of even the TIE fighters being able to do it by themselves.
yeah.
And Bob Van Bounty says light speed skipping makes no sense. And Aubergine Machine, tell me if I'm saying your name right, man, because I don't want to be messing it up.
Yeah.
But he says the Resistance is supposed to be a splinter faction led by Leia because the New Republic Senate wouldn't go to war. Okay.
That's an interesting take.
Is this something, though, that's mentioned in one of the books? Because they don't make that very clear at all in the movie. And
Yeah,
I firmly believe that you should not have to rely on a book to fill in the holes of what your movie doesn't say.
yeah. Like, there's nothing wrong with adding like extra material,
Yeah,
but if you're intentionally trying to fit puzzle pieces together with a book, then it just kind of defeats the purpose of the movie, in my opinion.
right.
Like, if the movie was complete and the book just said, hey, there's a little bit more to this, if you're interested in seeing almost like a bonus cutscene, if you will, kind of like how Marvel does, like their little end credit scenes, we're totally cool with that.
Yeah. And then Brandon says, because Disney had to change the names of the factions so everyone knows which era of Star Wars Disney owns or only wanted us to care about. And that's a fair point. And then
Hmm.
Bob Bad Bounty says, I like the idea that it's a splinter faction. It would have been nice if it was said. And yeah, that's not the only thing that these movies aren't clear about, and yet we're supposed to accept. Like, I know we're talking about The Last Jedi, but talking about The Rise of Skywalker now with Palpatine, the movie is not clear at all how he came back. The most we get is Palpatine saying that classic line from Revenge of the Sith that the dark side is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural, and then we get Mary or
I think
Dominic
it's
Monaghan. I call him
Dominic
Mary because
Monaghan.
it's easier. We
Yeah.
get him saying something like, maybe it was dark science or maybe it was cloning, secrets only the Sith knew. It's not spelled out for sure in the movie,
Yeah.
and yet it is in the novelization where they confirm that's a clone body.
All right, and now moving on to the second part of the plot, which I'm going to call Plot A. So Plot A is the one that has to deal with like Finn, Poe, Rose, and the Resistance fighters.
Okay.
Where the second part of Plot A revolves around this master code breaker, to which they have to visit a casino and find the master code breaker, see what we can do. So a lot of people would expect to who think that Lando was going to be this quote unquote master code breaker just because it was the perfect setup for her an original trilogy character, but instead we got that pretty much acts like a rabbit.
Yeah. And real quick, the Bombad Bounty says, if you need a book to further explain your movie, then you didn't do a good job with your movie. A book should enhance your experience with the film, not fix things. And Aubergine Machine said, Anakin's lightsaber is now sentient, it self-repairs. I'm pretty sure.
That
I don't think so. I think Rey fixed it.
Yeah, I think she fixed it in like the encyclopedia where she learned an ability to actually heal the crystal because it
Unless
came apart. And then
unless
of
they
course she did like sheet metal binding or whatever to close up that
right.
one gap.
Unless again this is something that they revealed in a comic book or another book or something that it actually is sentient, because while on the one hand that would explain possibly why Rey got that vision in the Force when she picked it up in the Force Awakens, but if they did that, at least for me, that would be well past jumping the shark. That would
Yeah.
just be stupid.
All right. So plot A, where they have to find the master code breaker, find a guy that looks like a rabbit, acts like a rabbit. Complete nobody. It was a waste, honestly. And then we
Yeah.
have the Rose character is pretty much like the best friend slash potential love interest to Finn, or at least that was something that was alluded to in the movie, but we never got to see. I really don't know what to think of her character, other than I think she had a good start, where she
Yeah.
was built up as kind of like the nerdy sister, where her sister, the war hero, sacrificed herself to with one of the bombers.
Hmm.
And so I think she had some potential, but I think she serves pretty much another L3 in this case, except L3 is obviously way worse.
Yeah. My biggest problem with Rose is that she is another very contradictory character, because again, she goes from in the Canto Bight scene saying that she wants to put her fist through that whole town because she hates that the people here are getting rich off of selling weapons to the First Order. But then later on in the movie, she saves Finn from sacrificing himself by going down the barrel of that cannon, and she says that we win not by fighting what we hate, but by saving what we love, which to me is a complete 180 from what she said in Canto Bight. Now, the fact that she has that 180 by itself, that's not a problem for me. But we need to see her go through some sort of character change to justify it, and we don't in this movie.
Yeah, we really just see her as like the nerdy sister or the little sister, or pretty much, and that's it.
Right. And then back to the comments. Machine says the wand chooses the wizard. I'm guessing that's a Harry Potter reference.
Yeah, it is.
I've never seen that.
Yeah. Where I would say,
And
yeah, that's kind of the case because if you look at the Clone Wars Youngling arc, they get to who get their crystals because the crystal pretty much chooses them. So I get what you're saying.
they mentioned that in Jedi Fallen Order also.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Bombad Bounty says, I may be the odd man out, but I dig Canobite as a place in Star Wars. It was like being at Monte Carlo, but in space. But I agree there, the mission was a waste. I think the Cantobite mission would have been better if Captain Phasma followed Finn and Rose to catch there. That would have been a
Yeah,
good idea.
yeah. And
And
for me, this actually leads to another good point of The Last Jedi. This whole dynamic between Phasma and Finn, where they pretty much hate each other. And for me, the best fight in all of the movie was Finn versus Phasma.
right. But did you know that that fight was going to end very differently?
Yes.
Yeah,
Did
there's
you mean like
the deleted scene. So there's a deleted scene for those that don't know that shows just after Finn damages Phasma's helmet and you see his eye and you see her eye, that Phasma actually gets back to her feet, and her and Finn are surrounded by, I think, 4 different stormtroopers, and Finn and Phasma are having a back and forth where Finn mentions, you're something to the effect of, "Oh, you're so intimidating in front of your men right now, but what if they found out that you were the one that turned off the shield for the Starkiller base to get blown up?" And of course, Phasma tries to play it off like, "Come on, who'd believe that?" But then you see the stormtroopers starting to, even under their helmets, have a little bit of doubt in Phasma's leadership, and Phasma notices this, which leads to her killing the stormtroopers, and then I think she gets shot by Finn, I
yeah,
want
she
to
gets
say.
shot by like one of those E-web heavy cannons, I guess. Or at
Yes.
least like a form of E-web, I would say.
Yeah. It's been a minute since I've seen that deleted scene, so I'll need to go back and watch it.
Yeah. Which for me, it was good seeing them fight. Like it was pretty much inevitable. But I want to say that they could have kept her character longer just because I think that her character just had a lot of potential, but it got wasted due to
Agreed.
Last Jedi.
Like, people say that Boba Fett was underutilized in the original trilogy. Phasma was underutilized worse in this trilogy. Like, what'd she have? Only like, what, 3 minutes total in this entire trilogy, and she wasn't even in Rise of Skywalker?
Yeah, it wasn't a lot. And the worst part is, and what makes it worse than Boba Fett was that she was set up to be this big character,
Yeah,
especially in The Last Jedi.
because I remember when the Force Awakens was coming out, she was like one of the characters that they advertised the most in all of the promotional arts, in all the
Exactly.
toys, in all of just the general merchandise in general. Like, I had a Phasma water bottle where it was a normal metal water bottle, but the cap was Phasma's helmet. And
Exactly.
they did practically nothing with her character.
Yeah. All right. So when they get, all right. So let's kind of backtrack into what I'm going to call Plot B when there's Luke and Rey on Octu. So well, this was also one of the weakest parts of the series of movies in the sequel trilogy, just because we pretty much see Luke pretty much not Luke. We see him isolating himself, and which I would say it wasn't necessarily that it was that bad, but it was the fact that it was just pretty much a little bit too overboard, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And then Aubergine Machine says Finn should have infiltrated the supremacy closer to the start of the movie, using his epic janitor skills to cause mayhem. Okay, I could see that. And then Bombad Bounty, and I think this is a good transition back to talking about the Resistance versus the First Order, and talking about Poe a little bit, says, I wish Holdo would have explained to everyone that they were heading to Crate. And
Who's Holdo again?
okay, sarcasm aside, Holdo for me is easily my least favorite Star Wars character, and it has nothing to do with her gender. My biggest problem with Holdo is that she's an absolute jerk, being family friendly about that, to Poe for no reason. Now, yes, Poe did screw up the mission with the bombers in the very beginning of the movie, take down that dreadnought. Even though they won, it did cost them a lot of lives and a lot of materials. So yeah, he did screw up and got demoted by Leia. That should have been enough of his punishment right there. But yet Holdo just decides to be an absolute jerk to him throughout all of their interactions and keep him and everyone in the dark for, again, no reason. Like he may have screwed up, but he's still a very important part of the resistance, and people tend to follow orders better when they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, and Bob Bad Bounty, can't really see it up in the stream, like over here. But he says, to be fair, it was JJ who sent Luke off to an island. I think all problems do go back to how Force Awakens was set up.
And then he also goes on to say Akbar should have replaced Holdo. And that's another thing, too. They killed off Admiral Akbar, one of the biggest memes of Star Wars,
Yeah.
with very little fanfare. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, just a really quick plug for Echo Base Network. Actually, I don't think I can say anything about that. So forget that I said I did not say anything.
Yeah. What did you say again?
Exactly.
Okay, so far as JJ sending Luke off to an island, I think what they were going for was that Luke was basically going to be old Ben and Yoda pretty much, where they pretty much isolated themselves for the sake of the Jedi. Yeah, which I think that's what they were going for, but we have Luke here who's basically living off an island just to die. Like, that's it.
So imagine this, if you will. Imagine if Obi-Wan... Oh, they announced on the stream, by the way, what you were about. Okay. All right, fair enough. So yeah, for Echo Base Network, for those of you guys that are watching this that don't follow Echo Base Network, they're going to have an interview with the gentleman, I forget his name. Someone will probably help me out in the comments, that actually was in the suit and was physically there on set to play Admiral Akbar. And continuing on with the comments real quick, Aubergine Machine says, just a thought, if one bomber was enough to take the Dreadnought down, then why not send Poe in one bomber as the best pilot? And the Bombad Bounty says, with keeping Poe in the dark, a quick fix for the film would have been for the Resistance offers to say, to make sure there are no First Order spies, our next steps to safety will be kept in... Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because, yeah. And speaking of speaking of First Order spies, I think that's probably the best way that you could fix the character. The most easiest way you could fix the character of Holdo is have her actually be a First Order spy, which is what I was expecting her to be when I first saw her. Like, that would fully explain why she is such a jerk to Poe and why she keeps all of her plans in secret from the rest of the Resistance, because she's actually leading the Resistance to their death at the behest of the First Order.
Yeah, and not just being both reckless and stupid, where Poe was just being reckless, but not necessarily stupid.
Exactly.
And so Mega Metalorian says, yeah, he was the only actor in the suit. He never voiced the character. So yeah, that's the guy that we're talking about, I guess. I guess that's like what's happening. Okay, so, and then
keeping on Admiral Holdo, let's talk about probably the biggest thing that she does in this movie, the Holdo Maneuver. What's your thoughts on that, Michael?
Well, I would want to say that it's definitely unorthodox, I will say. Like, I would almost make the case that the Bad Batch would approve, just because at least Wrecker is a fan of blowing stuff up, and what better way to blow stuff up than to send your ship through hyperspace at a bunch of other ships? Like, why not?
Right. And also, I don't mind the idea, again, that such a maneuver could be possible. But again, I feel like it's introduced too late into the story when you consider all 9 movies, because then the question arises: why didn't they think to do that with both Death Stars plus Starkiller Base plus even perhaps the droid control ship in Phantom Menace?
Yeah.
Like
Now
literally just
for Starkiller Base, it would be pushing it in my opinion, just because they're literally driving through a planet.
that is true, but it could still work. Like literally what they could do is just take a ship that they don't need anymore and put a droid on it to pilot the ship and just
Yeah.
shoot it into
Yeah.
whatever their target is. And the most you lose is 1 ship and 1 droid. Both
Yeah.
things that are much, much easier replaced.
Yeah.
And then
Honestly,
if
now
Bomb
that you
Go ahead.
mention it, the whole idea of the Holdem Maneuver honestly sounds like a kamikaze attack. Which, sorry if that term is offensive, but basically what that means is a bunch of pilots were sent from Japan. They weren't even, and they were sent there to where they would intentionally crash into stuff, and her goal was to make it was to not make it out alive, because in their culture surrender was dishonorable.
Exactly.
Which is the way that I would describe the Holdo maneuver. Basically
Right.
just ramming into something, knowing that you're not going to make it out alive.
Yeah. And then getting back to the comments real quick, Bombad Bounty says, "Hey, now they said that was a 1 in a million shot. How was that a 1 in a million shot? That's literally hitting the broadside of a barn, given how big the Snoke's Star Destroyer is. There was no way she was gonna
He's
miss that."
They're joking because you see the
I
thingy.
know, I know, but I'm ranting on how they said that in Rise of Skywalker. That's probably um, the
And
most blatant attempt to fix the problems that Last Jedi caused that Rise of Skywalker did.
yeah. Well, hey,
And then,
do you also notice that it wasn't the fact that Holdo shot only at the Snoke ship, but it took out pretty much the entire thing like a shotgun.
yeah,
So you're literally taking multiple shots at the same time with the Holdo maneuver, or at least the way that it was executed, if you will. And then Mega Metalorian says that Starkiller Base was ridiculously over the top,
yeah,
because why not?
and I only just recently learned. Yeah, I mean, we did moon-sized Death Stars. Now let's do a planet-sized one. But I did just recently learn, and this was kind of in part thanks to you, Michael, and your TikTok account, that
Yeah,
that was actually Ilum.
yeah.
And
And here's the
you
thing:
can
I did not know this previously, so y'all can come at me with it because I had learned about it. And it was also teased in Jedi Fallen Order as well. So if you want to look at that, go for it.
right,
But they didn't even make that clear, which could have been a driving point of the First Order, where their mission was to basically get rid of everything Jedi and basically
right,
disrespect it in the most profane way.
exactly. And then getting back to the comments again, Bombad Bounty says, "Keep in mind, every Star Wars film introduces something new." And you're right. But what I'm saying is, if 7, 8, and 9 were going to introduce something new like that, they really need to stop and consider, how is this going to affect how people think about everything that's come before? Because if we introduce something so big, like the Holdo maneuver, like light speed skipping, like force healing, especially, how is that going, like, doesn't that ruin the
Yeah,
scenes that came before in the other
yeah,
6 movies?
yeah.
And on the
Because
topic of
the
yeah, and on the topic of force healing, why they don't explain this very well, but why couldn't Obi-Wan have used this against Qui-Gon? Why couldn't Anakin have used this against, with his mother? Why couldn't Obi-Wan have used this with Anakin after Mustafar?
yeah. All right, and now for more comments. The Holdo maneuver was was visually spectacular but physically stupid. Holdo's ship would simply disintegrate on impact. There's a corrected video on YouTube. Interesting. We may look that up.
Was this the Because Science channel by Kyle Hill? Because I think I've seen that video.
Yeah. And then Mega the Mandalorian says best pilot ever.
Or as Overlord DVD says, the bestest ever.
And then Bombad Bounty says, if ... it's a Akbar did the Holdem maneuver, would we be still having the same conversation? Well, no, because it would be called the Akbar maneuver then.
Yeah, but I think as far as the idea in general, yes, even if for me at least, even if it was Admiral Akbar that did that instead of Holdo, then yes, it would still raise the question of why didn't they do this before?
Yeah.
And I think the fact, at least for me, that I don't like Vice Admiral Holdo as a character is just the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And then continuing on, Mega Mandalorian says, I recall hearing it was Ilum a while back. Bombad Bounty says, I agree. They need to stop and think before they do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Mega
just
Mandalorian. Go ahead.
Just because the problem with it is that it doesn't fit well in the established continuity. Like, haven't seen these things in the past yet. So why introduce it now when it's more distant in the future? That's what the real problem is.
Yes. And then Mega Mandalorian asks me, have you read the EU Legends books? Very few of them. The ones that I've either read or listened to in an audiobook all the way through are Kenobi. That was an audiobook. A couple of the first of the Jedi Apprentice novels, the one that has Obi-Wan fail his, for lack of a better word, tryout to become a Padawan, and he's sent to the Jedi Service Corps on Bandamir, I think it is. And then 2 other novels, I forget what they're called, written by that same author that delve further into Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship as Master and Padawan just before Episode 2. And currently, I'm reading the first book of the Thrawn trilogy. So I do have a lot of catching up to do on quite a lot of Star Wars, to be honest with you, because for the longest time, the movies were basically it for me.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, all of that I have to do for catching up, all of that is being considered for video material.
Yeah.
And then continuing on, Bombad Bounty says, I wish Anakin knew about force healing. Oops. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which he was considered to be the chosen one anyway, so it would have made sense if he had force healing. But I don't know anymore. We got what we got in the end, even though it does have a lot of continuity errors. And then Brandon Deek says yes in response to, I'm assuming it was the because science video. So
yes. Okay.
I haven't
we've seen that. I thought I showed you that one once.
I don't think you did.
Or was it Jonathan?
Probably Jonathan, because I didn't see it. I only remember lightsabers in real life, lightsabers versus bullets. What else?
Darth Vader versus Xenomorphs from the Alien series. That's probably one of my favorite ones from what he did Star Wars related.
Yeah. Okay, so back to what we were saying with Admiral Holdo and the Holdem Maneuver. So it really wasn't that. It was really just how delivered Admiral Holdo was. Almost like a Brie Larson, Captain Marvel sort of situation, where she was intentionally to be played off as a person who is disliked. However, that's their character trait. It's not something that they fix. It's something that's part of their identity. And now, for Brie Larson and Captain Marvel's sake, it probably wasn't even on purpose, but it's what we got in the end.
Exactly.
And then...
Go ahead.
And then for Admiral Holdo, I would say it was intended that we don't like her, but that's it. There's no sort of redemptive arc other than she rams the entire First Order.
exactly. Like I said, I thought she was going to end up being a First Order spy or a turncoat, and yet she didn't.
Yeah.
So basically, she bullied Poe and ended up being in the right, which I don't like.
Yeah. All
Now,
right, and then
we got very, very sidetracked from what I was originally. We were about to talk about Luke, and then we got very sidetracked. So one more comment to go through. Mega Metalorian says there are a lot of good stories in Legends books that are way, way better than what the sequels. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but make sure to read in order beyond the Thrawn trilogy. I will make sure to do that. Thank you. I probably won't actually sit down and read them because I'm admittedly not much of a reader anymore like Michael is, but I'll find as many of these audiobooks as I can. And I'll also check out some of the ones that have come out that are actually canon. Like I just downloaded the Dooku Jedi Lost audiobook and I want to get into the Master and Apprentice book about Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. I'll probably get the audiobook for that too. So
okay.
I want to start getting beyond the movies.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to Luke for The Last Jedi. So,
Now, let me start off on this one, Michael, and let me paint everyone a picture.
mhm,
Imagine you're watching episode 4 and you meet Obi-Wan Kenobi for the first time and he sees the message that Princess Leia sent in R2D2 asking for his help and he's like, "No, I just can't do it. I failed because Anakin turned to the dark side. I will never be a Jedi again. I'm just going to stay here and die." And Luke basically has to drag him along to help until finally he does, face Vader, but it's not even really him that it's facing. Ben stayed behind on Tatooine. That's pretty much what happened with Luke.
mhm, yeah. Now, of course, in the case of Ben, and in the case of Ben, we do see like he really doesn't want to get involved, but I would say it's more so just because he feels retired and he's obviously very old.
Yeah, not to mention
But
he didn't get involved for the longest time because he had a job to do, which was watch over Luke.
yeah,
Why did Luke go to the first Jedi temple unless he had why did he go there to die, basically, as the Last Jedi set it up to be? Because that's another thing that the Force Awakens had set up completely differently. I assumed he had went to the first Jedi Temple to look for a way to defeat the First Order and defeat Kylo Ren, perhaps search for
yeah,
some sort of knowledge that none of the Jedi that trained him at least knew about, some
yeah,
sort of, you know, special ability in the Force that could help turn the tide of the war. But
yeah,
no, he went there to die.
yeah. And another thing I kind of wanted to see, given that, was pretty much what it was like to be a Jedi pre lightsabers. Now, like, hear me out. The only time we have ever really seen this was in Legends, where the Jedi pretty much just had what we would consider samurai swords,
Mm-hmm.
and they still used the Force before they moved to proto sabers and eventually lightsabers.
Right.
But this was literally the first Jedi temple. So through teachings of Luke or through discoveries of Rey, they could have seen what the ancient Jedi did.
Yeah. Now, talking about that real quick, aside from the Force tree being there and those ancient Jedi texts, they did a pretty crappy job of making that look like an actual Jedi temple. It just looked like a bunch of random huts, just on a random
Yeah,
island. Like there was no
yeah,
way of telling that this was like the birthplace of the Jedi.
yeah,
And then real quick, Mega Metalorian says Jedi Masters are always seeking knowledge to improve as a Jedi. Being a whiny, self-pitying hermit made no sense at all. Now, on that real quick, I agree. I know I'm somewhat in the minority with this, but I actually don't mind to an extent the idea that Luke blamed himself for Kylo Ren's fall to the dark side, as I'm sure Obi-Wan somewhat blames himself for Anakin's fall to the dark side. But number one, when you find out that there's a new hope for the Jedi, you don't stay down in the dumps and try and convince them that the Jedi need to end. You get up and you train them to perhaps succeed where you might not have, as
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Yoda did with Luke. And number two, you have no right to be upset about failing if in a way, well, let me backtrack. I would have much preferred to see Luke blame himself if it wasn't his fault that Kylo Ren attacked everyone. I know that doesn't make sense, but hear me out. It was Luke's fault in a way that Kylo Ren destroyed the Jedi Temple, killed some of his younglings, and took the
Yeah.
rest. Because, of course, Luke was sneaking up on him while he was asleep, entering his head with the Force, and sensing the possibility that he might turn to the dark side,
Yeah.
and deciding to kill him for that. It would have been much easier and would have turned out much better for the galaxy if the moment that Luke started sensing these dark feelings in Kylo Ren, to just sit him down man to man and talk, hey, is everything okay?
Yeah, pretty much, I want to say. And then the scene where with Yoda and Luke, I will admit, good to bring Yoda back and good to bring him in his classic form as a Force ghost, where I would kind of say some fans may not agree with it and they should have brought him as a CGI character. I can see that, but I personally like the classic better.
They were never going to bring him back as a CGI character. That was, as I said in my Force Awakens review, one of the things that they went out of their way to use as many practical effects as possible, because they wanted to, at least in their mind, fix the problems of the prequels. And one of the things that people did complain about the prequels was the overuse of CGI. Even though, as I've said, growing up with the prequels, I don't mind all the CGI in those movies. I love it.
Yeah.
And then real quick to the comments, Mega Metalorian says, I can see him blaming himself, but he would have been seeking to save Kylo from the dark side, not just go into hiding and avoid it all when things go wrong. And then the Bombad Bounty says, those random huts are actual ruins, 6th century monastic beehive huts. Some were recreated for the film as well. Right, that
Yeah.
is a real place. I think the island is called Skellig Michael. It's in Ireland.
Yeah. And then on the
Now,
final thought of pretty much of what Luke and his display on Crate and just the whole battle in general, it was very good visually. Yeah,
yes.
what the fight looked like, but as soon as he pulled out the blue lightsaber, I could tell like something was a little bit off.
Yeah, that made no sense at all, because that should have clued Kylo Ren right there that something was not right here, because he saw and helped destroy that blue classic Skywalker lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
So if Luke really wanted to fool Kylo Ren into thinking that he's really there when he's not, he should have used his green lightsaber instead of using the blue one. The only reason I can think that Luke was given the blue one to use is just for a sheer nostalgia pop of, the movie maker saying, "Hey, let's see Luke with his original lightsaber just one more time."
Yeah.
Even if in the story it made zero sense.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, if you're going to have Luke die in this movie, why not just have him actually be on the battlefield and have him do the same? You're already making this movie, you're already copying ideas from the original trilogy, so why not go all the way with it and have Luke do the same thing that Obi-Wan did, and just turn off his lightsaber and hold it in front of him and let Kylo Ren actually strike him down, instead of it being a force projection, and Nanny just got home, by the way. Instead of
Yeah.
it being a force projection, and somehow the effort from that was just more than he could handle, and he died from that.
Yeah.
Honestly, doing that, I get it. They're making Luke seem powerful in the Force, but it also makes him seem weak by comparison that he couldn't handle doing that.
Yeah. All right. And Rihanna Choplin says, "Sneep, snip, I'm back." Well, thank you for the good news.
Thanks
All
for
right.
coming, Rihanna.
So basically, for my final thoughts, since dinner's gonna be ready in about a couple minutes.
Oh, you
Basically,
got to get
for
off
the
here?
sequel soon, but not now.
Okay. Real
So,
quick before you
by
go, there's one more comment, or a couple more comments. Mega Metalorian says, it's acceptable that Luke could have made another blue lightsaber, so that may not have been an indicator for Kylo. And Bombad Bounty says, the battle between Kylo and Luke on Crate was visually beautiful. It really was echoing the martial art form of Kendo. I agree. Him using the blue lightsaber was confusing. And going back to
yeah,
Mega's comment here, it's possible he could have made a blue one, but why would he need to if he had the green one? We don't see him lose it or it get destroyed in this movie. So why wouldn't he still have the green one?
yeah,
And then
and
Bombad
then
Bounty says Luke used non-violence on Kylo and used force projection to punk out Kylo Ren and make a fool of him in front of the First Order, but I do wish he was there. Okay, I can see that. I can see that side of it. And
yeah,
then Rhiannon says, no problem, person.
yeah. All right. So basically, for my final thoughts on the entire sequel trilogy. So basically, was it perfect by any means? No. Can I still have fun with these movies? Sure. Will I still feel the way I feel about these movies? Absolutely. Just because by no means were they perfect. And I want to say that there was pretty much little to no interaction with these movies and George Lucas. And had there been more dialogue between in Lucasfilm in that current time and George Lucas himself, then it could have been a lot better. Kind of like
Right.
The Mandalorian, the Clone Wars, just because even though that Lucas wasn't necessarily the head of these projects, there was still a lot of dialogue between the original creator and the newer creators so that they could make something that was good.
Right. And real quick, Bombad Bounty said, remember when Kylo fought Finn and he said that lightsaber belongs to me. So Kylo should have recognized that Luke had Anakin's lightsaber. I'm guessing what they're implying here, but this is a stretch. I will admit this is a stretch. Is that Kylo was so enraged that I guess logically he wasn't thinking clearly and and he was so focused on killing Luke that he didn't stop to pay a little bit closer attention to detail and realize, hey, wait a minute, he's using the same lightsaber that I just helped destroy. Something's not right here. And then Mega
Yeah.
Metalorian says, how many lightsabers did Anakin lose, lol?
At least three.
Yeah.
So there's the first one from that got chopped
That,
up into bits where he said not again. There's the
there's the green
actually
one that
the
he
the
borrowed.
green one. And then
Yeah.
there's the blue one that he kind of had to give back. So that's three already. And then he lost this one four. And the comics he loses like so many. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. So
Okay.
those were pretty much like my final thoughts on the entire sequel trilogy.
Right. So thank you for jumping on here with me, Michael. I'm going to keep the stream going, but if you need to leave, go right ahead.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, PJ, for inviting me. And
Oh, you're
I'll just
welcome.
see you in the next episode of whatever we're going to do. And I hope you all have a good day.
Yep. And I'll get with you right after the stream ends and we'll sort of do a post stream conversation of how it went. And that was my brother, folks. So I'm very glad that he has decided to join. From I'm very glad that he decided to join this channel with me. It's honestly fun to do things with your family. And Rhiannon says, "Oh, there it is. Do y'all mind if I unsub on this account and resub on my channel's account? I'm not active here. Also, bye, Michael. Have a good day." Yeah, sub on whatever channel that you want to, Rhiannon. In fact, you can sub on both if you want. I really don't mind. And then a whole bunch of goodbye to Michael. So I'm really glad that Michael was on here sharing his take with it. We barely touched on Rise of Skywalker though. So I'll sort of reiterate what I said with with the review that we did. Can we boost my mic a little bit? I moved a little bit closer. How's that? If you guys can hear me clearly, now put a 1 in the chat and put a 2 if I'm still talking low. We'll do this echo-based network style. So 1 if you can hear me clearly, 2 if I can be louder. And Rhiannon says that she'll get her friend Tonks to sub too. Okay, yeah, please do. Tell everyone watching this, if there's someone that you might think might enjoy this channel, please tell them. And I'm seeing the ones pour in now, so we're good. There was one thing though that I wanted to touch on with Michael. We really did not touch on Rise of Skywalker that much when he was in here. So we're going to touch on that right now. So like I said before, Felix popped in, says, "Hi, Paul. Having dinner and working on my final paper for my master's course in theology. Great Star Wars conversation to listen to." Well, thank you, man. And I hope that you get a good grade on your final paper for your master's course in theology. Are you actually studying to go into the ministry, Felix? And while you're typing up an answer, excuse me for that, I'm going to resend out the StreamYard link to the Jedi Masters to the Jedi Master members of Echo Base and see if anyone else wants to pop in. Or, sorry, special guest appearance, since, Coach joked with me that they have the pop-in thing copyrighted. And hail to Catman, aka DD Myers. Thank you for joining. Bombad Bounty says, question, are you familiar with the Duel of the Fates script by Colin Trevorrow? If they would have gone with that script, my thought of the sequel trilogy would have been different than they are now. And I did. I think I saw Overlord DVD's video breaking that down, and it sure would have been interesting. It would have definitely actually followed The Last Jedi. But the one thing that I didn't like about it, and this is mostly just because I'm such a sucker for a redemption story, is I didn't like that Kylo Ren would have died as the villain. I think that Kylo Ren, I like that they basically redeemed him and made him turn good, even if it was kind of clumsy how they did it. But, and I get it, someone's got to be the villain, but I would have, I liked seeing Kylo Ren become good. And welcome back, Rhiannon. At least I'm guessing that's you. And then Mega says, any of the pre-existing material would have been better. Yes, especially the Thrawn trilogy. Felix says, my company is paying for it. That way I can help my parish more. I am by profession a mechanical engineer. And yes, this is indeed Rhiannon. Mega Metalorian says, Kylo should have been the big bad, not Palpatine. Yes, he should have. I do firmly believe that Palpatine should have stayed dead in The Rise of Skywalker. But here's the thing, though. Do you think that Kylo Ren would have actually succeeded in that role as the big bad? Because clearly Disney did not. So JJ was left with no choice but to bring back Palpatine, since Rian Johnson, of course, chose to kill Snoke. I think Kylo Ren should have been the big bad too, but clearly Disney disagreed. And then Bombad Bounty says, "True, I thought The Last Jedi was building Kylo to be the final bad guy at the end." Yeah, because at that point, think about this: the galaxy is basically controlled by a Skywalker at this point. So in a way, Kylo Ren kind of did get what Anakin wanted, at least what he said he wanted in that one conversation between him and Padme on Mustafar, where he said that if Padme followed him, Anakin could have overthrown the Chancellor and the two of them could have ruled the galaxy. And now here's his grandson Kylo Ren as pretty much the default leader of the First Order. But no, we got to bring back Palpatine. Now, don't get me wrong. I thought Ian McDiarmid did great as Palpatine, as he always does. But you could tell that Disney did not think that Kylo Ren could have succeeded as the big bad because of how he was written. And so they had to have someone more powerful than him. And then Mega Mandalorian says if they had written him differently, yes. And Bombad Bounty agrees. And Rhiannon says Disney logic. Yes, agreed. So real quick, I'm going to send out this StreamYard link again. Felix says that it was a desperation move by Disney. And Bombad Bounty says, in the Duel of the Fates script, Kylo succeeds at finding the power to cheat death. Yeah, he did, because didn't he, for lack of a better term, become a Force vampire in that script where he visited this planet really strong in the dark side and came across this one creature that taught him the ability to drain the life essence of the Force from someone and take it into himself? Kind of like, I think, Darth Nihilus in the KOTOR 2 game. So, yeah. And then real quick, hail to Elijah Westerkamp. Thank you for joining me. And Catman agrees with Felix. So, nice to know that the meme is still alive. Palpatine. Oh, nope. Can't have you here. This is a pro Jedi stream. We do not. The Sith and the Empire are not welcome here. I'm just kidding. And then Brandon says, trying to figure out if they had enough of Palps after he was blown up twice to clone him. Kylo was too whiny to be the big bad guy. And I agree with that. If he had been taken more seriously and he was actually perceived as a threat, he could have been the big bad guy for episode 9. But no, that's just not how it worked out. Okay, so I actually have joined the dark side, Paul. I do have a couple red, prop lightsabers, so I guess I kind of am on the dark side. But then again, I also have a blue and a green one too. And then, of course, I am the Senate. And then Mega Mandalorian says the Akbar is a trap meme should be the cover of The Force Awakens. I think the only reason that they didn't do that is because Family Guy did it first. And then Bombad Bounty says Anakin was whiny, must be a family trait. That is very true. I don't like sand. Is that what this stream is going to turn into? Just us quoting random Star Wars memes? Because I'd be down for that, but I do want to get back on topic. So, with the Rise of Skywalker, as I said in our review of that movie, the Rise of Skywalker was my favorite of the sequel trilogy, but but I was going into Tashi Station for some power converters. You can waste time with your friends after your chores are done. So, as I said, Rise of Skywalker is my favorite of the sequel trilogy. But I will 100% agree that the movie, especially in the very beginning, is just a downright mess. Like, it's clear that JJ didn't really want to follow what Rian Johnson had did in The Last Jedi, even though in some places he kind of did. But he wanted to go back to the story that he had set up in The Force Awakens. So I think if they were to do it right, number one, there should have been a plan for all three movies. Should have just followed one plan, one roadmap, kind of like what the original trilogy and the prequels did, where George Lucas was there for Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, even though he didn't direct those. He was there as like the main storyteller, keeping everything on track. And then they should have had someone like that for the sequel trilogy, but they didn't. J.J. Abrams set up the story, but then passed it off to Rian Johnson to do his own thing. And then J.J. was literally, in the case of Kylo Ren's helmet, left to pick up the pieces and try and fix it. So that's kind of what I know. We announced this on the last video we did for reviewing the Rise of Skywalker, but one of the big project that me and Michael want to get done for this channel is we want to do our own retelling of the sequel trilogy and show what it could have looked like had there been one plan for all three movies. And on that, Mega Metalorian said they had no plan. The people were running it like, oh, it says Star Wars. We'll make monies. And that's exactly true. They thought that if it has the name Star Wars on it, that it's just going to print money. But that's not the case, because the fans, like, it might have worked for the normal fans that are only just going to watch the movies. But for those of us that are actually invested in the story, it wasn't going to work, because we actually want, good quality storytelling. We don't just want something that's had the bare minimum effort put into it. And then the Catman says, whole thing should have, like you said, take one direction, not go all over the place. And Bombad Bounty said, but I think JJ is the big problem here, because the guy cannot make something original. Just look at his filmography. Yeah, because if I remember, Star Trek, his second Star Trek movie was a basically rewrite of the original Star Trek 2. And then Bombad Bounty said they had a plan. George literally gave them a plan, and they tossed all that away like it was yesterday's jam. You're right, and I still don't fully understand why they did that. I get they wanted to do their own thing, separate from the expanded universe. But you have the original storyteller that's giving you his story for what that would have looked like, and yet you throw it away and said, you know what? No, our stuff's going to be better. Why? What were you expecting? That obviously the stuff that you make wasn't going to turn out as good. Even, because again, here's the guy that made it, who knows what he's talking about, and you threw away his input. And then, of course, the Emperor saying, the only thing that saved the movie was me. Why won't they let me rest in peace? Felix says, I am also doing the original Thrawn trilogy through Amazon Audio. Have you heard anything about the Jedi Academy trilogy novels? I am reading through The Heart of the Jedi, as you know, a chapter a day before going to sleep. I have not heard anything about the Jedi Academy trilogy novels, but I will for sure look those up. Do they have audiobooks of them? Because I'll be more inclined to look at those than I will be the actual books. But getting back on topic again with Rise of Skywalker and what me and Michael are planning to do with our own sequel trilogy rewrite is basically what we're going to do is take the same characters that you know from the trilogy. So Rey, Finn, Poe, Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. I said those two separately on purpose. And Luke and Leia and Han and all of them. We're going to give those characters something different to do. And in some cases, change their character enough to where they fit their new role. And then Mega Mandalorian says, not going with the expanded universe was about not paying royalties after they spent so much acquiring Lucasfilm. So just business, basically. And then Sheev Palpatine says, Paul, have you read the ancient Sith texts? I'll be right back. I can't find them right now, but I have read the sacred Jedi texts. So I have both this, the Book of Sith, which I have read, but I can't find it right now, and the Bounty Hunter book that's like this. I've probably read this one the most because I like the Jedi more than I like the Sith as a faction. And I wish this was still canon, but unfortunately it's not. But yeah, this if you can get your hands on these, the Jedi Path, the Book of Sith, the Imperial Handbook, and the Bounty Hunter's Code, I think it's called, definitely check these out because they are a very, very cool read. And of course, Palpatine doesn't like it. Take it in. Soak it in. This is the side that I've chosen. I'm just messing around. So, let's see. Only through me will you achieve a power greater than any Jedi. And yet you died twice. So anyways, though, getting back on topic with what we were talking about, we're going to do this rewrite of the sequel trilogy. First, we got to write the script for it, of course, but we plan to do it in Lego animation. And with that, we have enlisted the help of our youngest brother, Jonathan, who you guys saw pop in earlier as Epic John. We're also going to do, and we're also going to see if we can get our friend Ash Knight in, because he does Lego stop motion stuff as well. And he's also really good with camera work for those. So we'll see if we can get those. We'll see if we can get him on board and see, what happens with that. And then real quick, Bombad Bounty says, for example, in their version of the Rise of Skywalker, they're adding CGI Camino clones on Exegol, the final fight between Palpatine and Force Ghost Anakin. Maybe. And then, of course, Rhiannon says, if y'all need help editing the videos, I can do it. I'll definitely consider that. Thank you. And then, of course, trash talking the Emperor. So, I guess to wrap it up, overall, having just rewatched the sequel trilogy and going into them with as clear and open a mind as I possibly could, I really didn't hate them as much as I thought that I had, as much as I thought I was going to. The movies themselves, honestly, I really can't say that I hate them. None of them are my favorite by any means. They're at the bottom of the list. But I don't hate them. And also, yes, please do. And Bombad Bounty says that's from the YouTube channel Fixing Disney Star Wars. So I'll definitely check that out too. If there was one thing though that I could say that I do genuinely hate about this this sequel trilogy is not the movies themselves, but what they've done to the fan base. Because as I have said multiple times now, the sequel trilogy, especially The Last Jedi, has divided the fan base more than even the prequels could even hope to do. Now, granted, of course, the fan base was divided by the prequels first, but the sequel trilogy made it way, 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 way worse, especially with the introduction of identity politics into these movies. Because, at least for me, and I'm sure a lot of other Star Wars fans agree with this too, I don't watch any movie, really, to be reminded of what's going on in the culture in the real world. I watch it to escape, to be transported to a fantasy world, in this case, a galaxy far, far away, just because I want to break from, the real world. So why would I want to watch something that's gonna remind me of the real world? And then Rhiannon says, I just don't. Oh, well, Bombat Bounty, I meant to click on yours, Rhiannon, but he said, I think we can all voice our opinions about the sequels, but we don't need to make 1,000 videos about why they suck. We need to move on and let go. And that's kind of what we're doing with this stream. Like, this stream is pretty much my last word on the sequels. Like, I really do not intend, beyond the sequel trilogy rewrite, to talk about how much they suck anymore. This video is kind of my last word on them. But the reason that I want to do this sequel trilogy rewrite is not just show how they could have been better, but I believe that to complain about something just to complain is one thing. But if you can also show ways to improve what you're complaining about, that's more constructive. So yes, we can sit here and say all day that the sequel trilogy sucked. This character sucks. This force ability is too unbelievable. But without offering a way that it could have been done better, what are we accomplishing? And then Mega Mandalorian says, identity politics have no place in entertainment. Exactly. So, yeah, and a couple years ago, back when my interest in Star Wars was at an all-time low, just after watching The Last Jedi and skipping out on Solo, hear me out. Back when my interest in Star Wars was at an all-time low, I found myself oftentimes asking myself, you know, what's the best way to think about this? Because on the one hand, yes, it's one thing to expect, quality entertainment, but at the same time, we very well could have not gotten any more new Star Wars movies had George Lucas not sold Lucasfilm to Disney. And I know for some that would have been a much, much more better outcome because yeah, we still had the expanded universe, we still had the the games, the books. Clone Wars would have finished the way it originally intended to. But at least for me, I wanted to see more actual movies because again, at that time, the movies were really all that I truly cared about. So this was a debate that I was having within myself for the longest time, whether or not to, keep mentioning that we want better stuff over just being thankful that we're getting anything. And taking a break from this, Rhiannon says, hey, PJ, if you get a Twitch account, you could stream Battlefront and other Star Wars games. I'm actually planning on doing that, finding out a way to stream to either Twitch or YouTube. Problem is, though, I think I need some sort of like capture card that I can hook up either my Xbox to the computer or figure out a way to stream directly to my laptop. So I would like to get into game streaming, but I just got to figure out how to do it. But yeah, like the movies, that's what people care about the most. And for the longest time, it wasn't looking like we were going to get anything past, Revenge of the Sith. Like I remember that George Lucas at one point said, you know what? No more movies. You guys didn't like the prequels so much. That's it. I'm not going to make episodes 7, 8, and 9. The end of Return of the Jedi is the end of the story. So on one hand, it's like, be thankful you're getting anything at all, but on the other, it's like, just don't give me crap. And then the Bombad Bounty says the fan backlash to the prequels is also a reason why we didn't get his vision for the sequels. He was hurt by it that he literally gave it away, and I bet he regrets it from time to time. Oh, I bet. Especially when you had Kathleen Kennedy sitting right next to him, lying to his face, saying, oh, we're going to respect the characters that you've created and make sure that they continue to live as you intended. And then she turns around and kills Han in Force Awakens, kills Luke in Last Jedi, and kills Leia in Rise of Skywalker. All basically to promote their own characters that they created over the ones George Lucas created. I'm guessing because Disney wanted to create their own stuff and focus more on their stuff than they did the stuff that they bought. Even though because they bought it, it's theirs too, but they didn't create it, so they don't care. And then just a quick shout out to Daryl the Derelict. Thank you for joining us. Bombad Bounty says, I saw Revenge of the Sith in a theater and walking away, I thought to myself, that was it. That was the last film in the saga that I will ever see, and I was depressed for years. Yeah, I can feel that. Yeah, that's kind of the same feeling that I had after walking out of seeing The Rise of Skywalker, because that was basically the end of the Skywalker saga. So yeah, I know what you mean. And of course, people saying goodbye. I think I'm gonna head off of here too. I've been streaming now for 2 hours. This is the longest stream I've done so far. So that's pretty much my last word on the sequel trilogy. I don't hate the movies themselves, but we could have and arguably should have gotten better. And I mostly hate the sequels for what they've done to the fan base. And I'm going to pose this last question to you guys, and we'll have a really quick discussion on that. What, if anything, do you think it will take to reunite the fan base from being so fractured? Now, I know there's these rumors going around of Kathleen Kennedy allegedly not getting her contract renewed in the fall when it expires, and that someone else is going to come in. But I think there's more to it than that. And I think the best way to reunite the fan base, even if Kathleen Kennedy stays, is just give us good content to, just give us good Star Wars. That's what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni had been doing with The Mandalorian. That's what they're currently doing with The Bad Batch. That's what I hope we get with the Kenobi series. Like, I would not have a problem with Kathleen Kennedy staying at Lucasfilm if we got good Star Wars out of it. That's ultimately all I'm asking for. But if Kathleen Kennedy leaving is what it takes to get good Star Wars again and start repairing the fan base, then so be it. But no, Palpatine, we do not condone or endorse violence against anyone. And yes, there is a Kenobi series coming out, Rhiannon. I think it's coming out in 2023. And Ewan McGregor is coming back for it. Daryl says, I honestly don't think there is a way unless Favreau and Filoni take over the story group, like you said. I agree, because here's the thing. Even if Kathleen Kennedy goes, she still has a lot of her people in place in the story group. And who's to say that one of them could get promoted if Disney truly wanted to go with, making Star Wars a platform over making good Star Wars. Disney could just promote someone like, God forbid, Pablo Hidalgo, and Star Wars would arguably be in an even worse position than it's in now. So if I was Bob Chapek and Kathleen Kennedy's contract was going up, this is what I would do. Not renew. I would not renew Kathleen Kennedy's contract, number one. Number two, I would bring back the man who created it, George Lucas, just as a stand-in for running Lucasfilm, and I would fire the entirety of the story group, and of course replace it with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, because because I know there's these rumors going around that that Jon Favreau is the one that is going to take over Lucasfilm. In fact, it's even been hinted at in that one leak on Reddit that Kathleen Kennedy would love to see Jon Favreau take over. But I agree with those that say that I don't think Jon Favreau himself would want to actually run Lucasfilm, that he's more interested in being a storyteller than he is running a business. So what I would do is have George Lucas come in to mostly handle the business side, but perhaps give some input on story, have the main story efforts be with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, and that's how you right the ship. And you start promoting good stories that are there just to tell a story and not promote some sort of belief. And then real quick, Felix agrees with me saying, no, Pablo. Yes, absolutely not. And then Bombad Bounty says, I don't think there is a way either. Every fan has an expectation of what Star Wars should be, and you can't please everyone. If Kathy goes, that doesn't mean things will be fixed. And you're right. It's impossible to please everyone. But at least the way that I see it, that doesn't mean you shouldn't at least try. There's gonna be people that don't like anything that you do, and but if you can please the most people that you can, that's a win in my book, and that's what they need to get back to. And then Rhiannon says, today I learned that if you send an iPhone user saying pew pew, then it shoots lasers. I'm gonna have to try that. So I think that's a good place there to end the stream. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have not already, please hit like and subscribe. And I'm not sure yet what our next video is going to be, because that's pretty much it for things that we have to review right now. So I guess the next thing is we'll just be, me and Michael will be keeping our ears to the ground as far as Star Wars news. We'll, of course, keep continuing to talk about the Bad Batch as it comes out. But yeah, we don't know for sure yet what's going to happen, but make sure whatever it is that we come up with, you stay tuned, hit like and subscribe, and we will see you guys all later. Thank you very much.